Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Xolile, but you can call me Mr. X. It's fine. That's dangerous because X is a variable. Okay, you can call me Mr. X6 until BMW release X7. Okay. I must warn you that unlike Kanya, I was taught English in Zulu, so you'll pick it up as I'm speaking. And I don't know why I was given this hard part to talk about systems. Okay, so essence, if I may gauge by, if you could raise hands, those that know about essence or SEMAT. Okay, thanks. So essence is actually a child of SEMAT. Okay, this is one of the things that I'm gonna forget. Essence is a child of SEMAT, which stands for Software Engineering Method and Theory. So it was founded by Ivar Jacobson, Bertrand Meyer, and Richard Xolile. They realized that there is a need to refound software engineering because of the issues and many problems that we experience in software engineering. They needed to find a basic theory for software engineering. So in September 2009, there was a call for action in that regard. And in response to SEMAT, Ivar and his associates came up with Essence. So what is Essence exactly? Essence is described in a very simple layered architecture. It consists of methods, practices, the kernel, and the language. The methods are composed of practices, and then the practices are things that you do in order to achieve your goal. And then there's a kernel. Now, a kernel describes the elements that you are using, which forms the base. So you could be using any other method like your waterfall, agile, and so forth. But you still have the kernel. I think those who are developers understand what a kernel is in that sense. So it's the base. This forms the base of your software engineering on which you can apply the practices and methods, whichever ones you choose. And then finally is the language. The language is used to define practices and methods that you are using so that there's common understanding and also the adaptation is easy and it can be improved going forward. But why is the kernel important, or what makes the kernel important? One of the factors is that it forms the common ground. As we're having the Agile conference now, Agile is the flavor of the day. I mean, most organizations where you go, they're talking about Agile, but there's still other practices and methodologies that others are using. However, the kernel will give you the common ground to say, this is the basic theory, regardless which methodology or practice that we are using, but we still have this basic theory that we use for our software engineering. So how is it organized? The essence is organized into 3 focus areas, which is 1, customer. Kanya spoke a lot about that in the BMC. The second one is solution and endeavor. And then these 3 focus areas are broken down into, they have these elements which are alphas, activity spaces, and competencies. So alphas are things that we aspire to do, things that we want to work with, or goals. And activity spaces are things that we need to do in order to achieve the goals, and also the competencies that we need in order to be able to achieve the goals. Whatever we are building, whether it's a software, we need specific competencies to be able to achieve that. Then the next part is the alphas. I spoke about the alphas. There are about 7 alphas in the kernel, which is opportunity, stakeholder, requirements, software, system, work, team, and way of working. And these are the relationships, as you can see there, A stakeholder would identify the opportunity and therefore define the requirements to satisfy that opportunity. Those requirements will be used to build the system. However, in the last focus area there, you have a team that needs to build the system. However, the team needs to establish a way of working to achieve their work, eventually build a system that is going to be used or consumed by the stakeholder. And let's have a look at one alpha to see, just to see how this works. We'll take the opportunity as the example. So now an alpha will have alpha states. We're looking at the opportunity. We want to test if the opportunity exists. Is there a reason to build this software system? So your alpha states, the first one would be identified. Is the opportunity identified? Is the solution needed? Is the value established? Is it viable? Is it addressed? The benefit accrued. So as you can see, those alpha states, they evolve as you build a system. Probably the first one where you ask, is the opportunity identified, could be when you're still testing your hypothesis, or whether is there a need to build a system. However, if you look at the last one there, or the second last one, it says addressed. This could be now, once the system has been built and tested, we ask the question again, does it address the opportunity? And also, is the benefit accrued for the system that we've already built? Now, furthermore, to each alpha state, there's a checklist which guides the team. For instance, if you look at the first one, I'm sure probably you can't see the checklist, but don't worry about that. However, they are there to guide the team to say, if we say the opportunity is identified, here are the checklists that we go through to test exactly if this opportunity is identified. Now, how does kernel work? So we've seen the elements, we've seen that you have alphas, which have alpha states and checklists, but how do you use kernel and how do you put it to work? So the first step there would be to look at the project holistically in terms of all those 7 alphas. And then the next step would be to monitor the progress. So if you look at we're using the example on the alpha requirements. I showed you the opportunity alpha before, but for this example, I'm using the requirements alpha. So if you look at the graph on your right there, it's looking at the first alpha state, which says the requirements are conceived. Now, when you look around the graph, you will see that the requirements are 1 alpha state up. So meaning that when the team does the assessment, they can see that, okay, this alpha state has been satisfied. But this doesn't work for this example only. As you can see, the opportunity alpha there is already at point number 4, meaning that the other 3 alpha states are already satisfied. And then the next step would be for the team now to set the goals, moving from the current state to the target state. Now, the next state would be to say the requirements are bounded. What do we do as a team to move to the next state to satisfy the next alpha state? The next step would be to decide how to reach the goals. The team, whether it's in an agile team, we discuss and come to an agreement to say, how do we take this project now to the next state to satisfy the next alpha state? The last one there is to work on the items to satisfy the next alpha state and test the alpha state. And then eventually you'd be back to your first step. However, notice that time would have elapsed whilst you were working on these states and the steps. So this highlights the agility that is in Essence. It is iterative. You can repeat these steps as much as you can in order to satisfy the different states. Now, the biggest question or what you've seen, maybe what attracted you to this topic, that Essence is a safety net for entrepreneurs. So if you look at the background, this shows the BMC that Kanya has explained earlier. In the value proposition, the question that we are asking is what is the problem that we are solving? What are the customer needs? Now, the entrepreneur is at a stage now where they can build a system. They think there's a need for a system. However, when it comes to Essence, on the opportunity alpha, Essence will ask, is there a value in building the system? Is this system viable? Is there a reason to build a new system? So when you look at this, you can see the synergies that are in BMC and Essence. And naturally, the entrepreneurs, there comes the Zulu again. Naturally, they identify the opportunities. They would identify the stakeholders. However, when it comes to a value proposition, sometimes it becomes difficult in terms of the system. How do they get to a point to say, we do really need a system to satisfy this need? So this is where Essence comes in. Whether the entrepreneur deals with a vendor or the entrepreneur themselves, they are building the system themselves, then they will be able to ask those questions and test if the system is required. Okay? And yeah, that's about it on Essence. Maybe if I could take any questions around Essence. So I assume answers only. Okay, Caesar.
So I see this model exists, and I've stolen all your ideas already. But have you modeled this in some sort of software? Have you made software that models this?
Okay, so probably we should have spoken about copyright or what? Perry. Okay, so we already have a tool that still needs to be improved. And in the next part, Perry will be showing us the tool that he's used before to do the assessment for different startups to test if they're in the right path and if their minimum viable product is profitable. Okay, thanks. Any other question? Yes. 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 No, that's great. And Barry is going to address that. Okay, maybe I should hand over to Barry now. Thanks.